Hey, everybody. We are very excited to be launching a brand new series where we partner with state guilds to take a closer look and dive into their current successes, challenges, and state level trends. So often we have a strong pulse on what's going on in our home states and even on the national level. And we hope these conversations can offer you with valuable insights into what your next door neighbors and not so next door neighbors are facing. And today we've got South Carolina. And Pearce, because you are to the right of me, I'd love to tell everybody about what you do in the world of South Carolina beer.
Sure. I am Pearce Fleming. I own Commonhouse Aleworks in North Charleston, South Carolina. And right now I have the privilege of serving as the president of the South Carolina Brewers Guild.
Well, awesome. Thanks again for being here, Pearce. And when did you all open the brewery?
We opened in January of 2018. So we just celebrated 5 years earlier this year.
Awesome. Well, congrats on that. And thanks for being here. Campbell, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. My name's Campbell Mims. I have the opportunity to serve as the executive director for the South Carolina Brewers Guild. So I've been in this role for about 11 months now.
Well, congrats, Campbell. And how many breweries are currently in South Carolina, operating breweries?
So we've got about 140 licensed breweries in South Carolina, according to our regulatory agency that actually keeps those records in South Carolina.
Excited to see that grow. And we're hosting CBP Connects there in Charleston this December. So excited to come experience it myself.
Absolutely. Look forward
Terry,
to it.
you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I'm Terry Horner. I'm the owner of Liability Brewing Company in Greenville, South Carolina. I am the vice president of the Brewers Guild, and we've been open for 5 years this month. So we've got our anniversary party coming up.
What are you going to do for the big anniversary, Terry?
We've got a lot of special beers lined up, some newly themed merchandise and swag and everything. And we're throwing an anniversary party. We're in kind of a shopping center, little complex, and we've got a couple neighbors barbecue and other places that it's their anniversary as well. So we kind of throw this giant block party and invite the whole town basically.
Sounds like a good time. So when you and Pearce opened in 2018, approximately how many breweries were open in South Carolina?
That's a great question. I don't know that I know in South
If you
Carolina.
had to throw out a random number, I'm not going to know if you're wrong, right?
Well, I do know these numbers. So in South Carolina, Campbell mentioned the total number in the Charleston area where I am. There are now 42 breweries.
Wow.
When I was writing the business plan for Commonhouse, there were 4. We purpose-built our brewery, so when we broke ground, we would have been the 8th brewery in town if we had opened our doors that day. But in the 9 months it took us to build out, 8 more came online, so we were the 16th brewery in Charleston, opened in 2018.
I'll take it, Pearce. So
very rapid growth across the last 10, 12 years, obviously.
Yeah, it's really fantastic to hear. I mean, Campbell, you're the newest to the beer world in South Carolina. You said 11 months, right?
That's right.
What attracted you to wanting to be the executive director of a Brewers Guild?
I mean, I think it was an opportunity that fell in my lap 11 months ago that I couldn't really pass up for the opportunity that I've been given. So to be able to work in this association, in this industry and being able to push a legislative agenda forward. I mean, for a guy like me who's 24 years old, that's a pretty big shoes to fill, but it's also been a fantastic opportunity for me. And so 11 months ago, if you had asked me what I know today, it would have been almost nothing. But 11 months later, I think because of these two guys that are on the screen here today, and a lot of others that are also in our membership and our association as well, I would like to think that I've at least become somewhat of a novice. I'm definitely not an expert, and I don't even consider myself a moderate level, but I at least have a baseline knowledge that's able to, present our message and what we want to do in our hardships to policymakers and external stakeholders. That's able to kind of push our message forward. So it's been a great experience so far.
I can only imagine. No, Pearce and Terry, what attracted you most about bringing Campbell on?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I'll go. So from my standpoint, running a guild is difficult, and we were in the situation through COVID where we basically had to start over with our guild, and Pearce and I were heavily involved in that. And so what we were looking for was we needed somebody that could manage us essentially, make sure that the business of the guild continued while we were off running our breweries. Basically fill in all the gaps that we didn't I'm going to say don't have time for all the time. I think that's the most honest assessment of it. And we knew we needed someone who was great at communicating with folks. Campbell had led an association previously, and so his experience was great, communications background. And I mean, then we interviewed him, and he checked all the boxes. So it's been a great experience working with him thus far.
Love it. Pearce, any additional thoughts there?
Totally agree. I think running an association, running our guild, and the work that goes into, operating the guild is very different than running your brewery. I think all of us on the board had to, really look ourselves in the mirror and say, especially during COVID, my full-time job is being here and being with my team here and running the brewery here. Terry's at Liability. And so we needed somebody with a lot of energy, enthusiasm, the ability to communicate, rally people around ideas and that sort of thing. And Campbell had done that in another association. And we were thrilled to have him join.
Campbell, isn't it fun to bring people together?
It is. It really is. And I mean, as any trade association, I think the whole goal is, you should be trying to provide as many resources and as many opportunities for your members to be educating themselves, but also the resources that we're providing, I think, as a guild today in 2023. And Pearce and Terry have been around long enough to, I think they could agree with this. And thanks to their help and the rest of the board's help, I mean, I think we have done a complete 180 of what we were providing years ago when this guild was first started to today, and how far we've come in the resources and the benefits that our members are getting. So it really is. It helps it makes it a lot easier to bring folks together whenever you're able to see the work that's come to fruition.
So Campbell, when they first brought you on, what were those first items on the to-do list that they wanted you to knock off?
I distinctly remember one of my first tasks being a history lesson in South Carolina beer from Pearce, Fleming, and Terry Horner. So from these two gentlemen on here, I think I was down in Key West, Florida, believe it or not, on vacation, I think my second week on the job, and was sitting in a parking lot down on Key Largo at the beach and was taking a virtual call, and had a whole run through of where South Carolina had been, from the 90s, kind of on the birth of the craft beer scene up until, very recently. And so I think, there were a lot of things I think that I would have said, I'm gonna put this on my to-do list to get done. But I think the board really was just get your feet wet, learn about the industry, learn about the membership, get to know the issues. Because until you do that, until you meet folks and build that trust, especially being somebody so new coming in, I knew myself personally, they didn't necessarily tell me this, but I knew that I wouldn't get very far without doing that. And so one of my first tasks was really trying to build that trust within the membership, trying to connect with as many members as I could, connect with my board members, so that I did have that credibility moving forward to be able to do the important work that we've been doing the last 12 months. So
Campbell and everyone, looking at the history of South Carolina beer, who is the oldest brewery in the state of South Carolina? How long are we talking?
Well, Palmetto Brewing would be the oldest in the state. They opened in the 90s in Charleston. There's been some others. Thomas Creek certainly been very, very influential in the upstate. You find, or at least in my experience, I think it's this way in any business, there are industry makers, if you will. And Palmetto certainly has been that in the Charleston area. I would dare say Thomas Creek has in the upstate as well, because most of the folks in the upstate of South Carolina can trace their lineage of people working there somehow, some way to the team at Thomas Creek. But I would tell you, most all of us, especially if you've been around for a while, understand that we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jamie Tenney and Dave Merritt of Coast Brewing here in North Charleston, because Jamie was really, they're a husband and wife dynamic duo, and Jamie, in really for the love of the craft and of Dave's dream to have his own brewery, she modeled our Pop the Cap efforts after those in North Carolina back in the mid-2000s. And that was the first, and I would say still most monumental change that occurred in South Carolina that started to open the doors to more craft brewing. Effectively, before then, you could not make a beer over 5%. ABV in South Carolina. And so she, I often have to remind myself, Jamie did as a guild and committee and team of one what,
Wow.
5, 10, 12 of us do now as a board, along with 100, odd members.
What approximate time frame was that, Pearce?
2007 was, I believe, when the law was changed. So I could not tell you with absolute certainty how many years she'd been working on it, but at least 2 or 3.
Now, Terry, from your perspective, when did craft beer really take off in South Carolina?
That's a good question. So I'm not a South Carolina native like Pearce is, but I can tell you I got here in 2012, and there was some beginnings of it at that point, but I think around the time frame that Pearce was mentioning, like when I wrote my business plan, I think I started it in 2016. We started to see some breweries open up around Greenville and upstate. And elsewhere, Charleston grew faster than the rest of the state did. That's when I really, as a beer consumer, as a beer lover, really started taking notice. And one of the reasons that I love beer and home brewer and similar background as Pearce and a lot of brewers. One of the reasons we opened is we said, like, South Carolina is kind of lacking in great craft beer. There's not, tons of breweries like there is in Asheville or other places. And so that was kind of the impetus to get things going. But there was also some law changes in, I believe it was 2015 was the Stone Bill beer, somewhere around there.
13, I believe.
13. Okay. So that was really the impetus behind all of the rapid growth that we've experienced.
What were those laws that changed around that time?
Yeah. So the Stone Bill, as we affectionately call it, like I mentioned, Dave and Jamie worked diligently to pop the cap. You started to have some breweries start to roll onto the scene. Holy City Brewing here in Charleston will celebrate, I believe, 12 years here in a couple of weeks. So you saw some growth 2010 to 2013, and Terry might be right, it might have been 2015, but somewhere 2013 to 2015, you had the breweries out west start looking for East Coast hubs. So you had Oscar Blues come to Brevard, North Carolina, Sierra Nevada built in Mills River outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And the gorilla in the room became Stone Brewing, was looking to create a new world of beer gardens, or whatever they call it. And very, very smartly, some key leaders at the time in the guild, along with the executive director at the time, Brooke Bristow, moved from focusing on our work as an alcohol producer, from an alcohol producer slant to an economic development slant. And that got people like the Department of Commerce in Columbia, the state capital here in South Carolina, involved, looking to recruit Stone Brewing to South Carolina, specifically the Charleston area. To do that was going to require very specific changes to the state law. At the time, before that bill passed, there was no real concept of a tap room in South Carolina. You could do a tasting and a tour, and people could take beer to go, but you could not serve pints, certainly freely serve pints to people. But the way Stone's facility in Escondido works, obviously they have a huge restaurant, they have guest taps, they serve wine and liquor. And so the Stone Bill, as we affectionately called it, passed laws to give producers in what we are here in South Carolina as a mandatory 3-tier state, to give us as producers more rights akin to retailers, so that we could run a retail outlet out front to help balance our margins, blend our margins. And so it's worked very well. And that was when you saw a lot of takeoff of breweries.
Well, I hate to tell you, Pearce, but they ended up in my state of Virginia.
Yes, they did.
But I'm glad to help with your laws there.
I absolutely did.
So it sounds like, consumers weren't having the full immersive taproom experience until then. I'd love to learn a little bit about the South Carolina beer consumer and how it's evolved since, talking 2016-ish.
Oof.
I know, where do we begin on that? I mean, every state is always working on, I think, focusing on how we can best educate, our citizens to drink our beer. Have there been any initiatives that have worked really well, or what do you feel it's like at the moment?
Well, one of the things we've done in the last was let's do the second one this year. There have been beer festivals here in South Carolina in the past. One big one, again, we talked about Jamie and Tenny and Dave Merritt. They Coast, in partnership with some other folks in Charleston, had a big beer festival called Brewvival that really was successful for many years. I would dare say a lot of us miss it desperately. But we brought back the concept of a local beer festival through the Guild, the Best of South Carolina Beer Festival in Columbia last year, and we'll do that again this fall. So that is one way we're trying to highlight, especially a lot of the new entrants to the market over the last several years.
No, looking at what the consumers want to drink, we all hear about national trends, but like Terry and Pearce in your tap rooms and those you talk with, what are the styles consumers are seeking out? Is there anything that's surprising you in compared to national trends? Are we seeing all the same as we hear in, every state?
No, I think it's in my experience, Charleston and Greenville are two very different beer markets, taste wise. IPAs will dominate, no matter what market you're in, obviously. But the upstate, we have a large European influence because BMW is here. And we also have the southern, sweet tea drinking type of folks. That's a large cultural influence down here. So some of the flavors that we end up with, personally, like our IPAs that are successful, are a little bit less bitter than the ones that you might find out west or elsewhere. The lagers do really well up here, the German beers specifically. And yeah, it's an adventure figuring out. Our Belgians actually are our best-selling beers. It's an adventure figuring out the consumer's taste, but there's also the market here. While Pearce and I have been around for 5 years now, and some breweries longer, it's still really young compared to other states, especially like North Carolina.
So I imagine you're still getting quite a people coming to tap rooms for the first time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that side of things, I imagine events are probably something you all focus on at your tap rooms. Are there any certain types of activities that have been better at attracting, say, non-beer drinkers or non-craft drinkers to educate them on who you are and what you do?
Well, for Commonhouse specifically, we do a ton of the community impact work. And so we do a lot in bringing organizations into the brewery, into the tap room, onto our grounds to use our platform to promote them. That also has the benefit of getting people that may not come to a craft brewery out to experience our place. And sense of place is very important to us. So it hopefully is a mutually beneficial activity.
Yeah, that's pretty common. We do that as well.
No, Campbell, go ahead.
I was going to say, in addition to what I guess Commonhouse and Liability kind of on an individual member basis are doing to educate, the wider community, I think what the Guild has done a good job of, even before my time and maybe even before Pearce and Terry's time, is kind of leaning on, our corporate partners. So we like to call those our affiliates. And so we have about 50 plus affiliates who are your canning lines, your insurance companies, your law firms. And these folks are really, I look at them as advocates in each of these little communities. And a lot of them are located in South Carolina. Some of them are located, as you very well probably know, Andrew, like national companies that also have, a presence here in South Carolina or won't have a presence. And so I almost like to use our affiliate members and make sure that they know that they are a brand ambassador, kind of a brand advocate for what the South Carolina Guild is doing. And so I think, kind of collaborating with them on what they're doing on a daily basis and their business model, and then workshopping that, running that parallel with what the Guild's goals and strategies are. I think you start to see individual consumers across the state saying, oh wow, that law firm, that I've used for my real estate closings for the past couple of years, they have a presence in South Carolina Brewers Guild. They're an affiliate. I see them on their website. I see them on social media. So you get some public awareness around both of those entities. But then people want to start digging into what is a guild? What is South Carolina craft beer? Who are the members? Okay, where's my local brewery? And I think it's a domino effect. And I really think that we've seen that. At least I've seen that. And I think the board and Pearce and Terry have seen that too the last couple of years, as people are really starting to buy into these corporate partners that we've got on our side that are able to help us kind of achieve our mission. And it only helps them and it helps us. So it's been great.
Campbell, I love that so much because, CBP is in a weird way, many ways like a guild, and we rely on the support of our industry partners just like a guild does, and they help make the world go round. They help us do all the fun things we want to do for our members. So huge thanks to all those partners out there. And, you all do a bit of events too as a guild. You do a conference. Talk to me about what the guild does for events to bring people together.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I like to say that we have 2 signature events every single year that kind of encompass our guild. And so one happens at the first half of the year, one's at the second half of the year. We're coming up on the second half of the year. So you're getting ready to see the second annual Hop Forward Best of SC Craft Beer Festival take place on September 30th here in Columbia. So that's kind of our public facing event. We really want to showcase 75 plus breweries in a space where the public, kind of going back to that public awareness engagement, can come in and taste some great beer. And we're trying to every single year elevate the level of attractions and that we have and the amenities that we have for consumers to come in. So that's kind of a signature consumer event. You look in the winter, spring, and we've got our conference and trade show, which is an industry only event. And I say industry only to mean it's our brewery members, it's our affiliate members, it's speakers, it's vendors, and it's really tied to the craft brewing industry here in South Carolina. I think arguably that event is probably more beneficial to our brewery members in terms of the level of education that they receive and the terms of level of updates, with our advocacy work they receive, the level of collaboration and networking they receive. And so those are the 2 events that we kind of call our signature of what we do best here in South Carolina. One that's more geared towards the industry level of education, and one that's geared towards educating our public. And then, throughout the year, we also do, some quarterly happy hours within South Carolina that's split up amongst the state. That's an opportunity for our brewery members to get together with our affiliates, but also we bring in local policymakers as well in order to kind of show them, what does a brew house look like? What does a tap room look like? What's the day-to-day of how it's run? What's the economic impact? So it's really beneficial for us to be able to do those kinds of, feet in the shoes kind of events to put people in the place where the business really happens.
I want to dive into something you finished with there, Campbell. I'm bringing in local legislators to some of these events, showing them how a brewery works. How are you all building relationships with your state government and local governments?
It is something that I think this guild has been very good at working on since it was founded in 2009. I think it hasn't been a short-term game. It's been a very long-term game for us. And I think that what we've had to kind of lean into, as Pearce said, is really that economic development piece. Our leaders here in South Carolina are always going to be wanting to know, how does this reinvest back into the state? How does this improve quality of life for South Carolina citizens? And I think that by showing breweries, I think specifically, I'll give an example, specifically breweries that are coming to some rural communities here in South Carolina. I can point to my hometown of Sumter, for example. That the brewery that has opened up in downtown Sumter has completely revitalized that entire downtown area, which there really was, before that, there really was not much there anymore. Shops had kind of moved off of downtown. The brewery has come back down there. More shops have opened up down there. You're seeing more business. You're seeing more foot traffic, which is then increasing other businesses' foot traffic and their, for lack of a better word, their bottom line and revenue. And so I think that's what we've had to kind of lean into when we're talking to our leaders, but also showing them that these breweries that are in their districts and in their communities, they are community partners. I mean, they, as Pearce said, they lean into sponsoring little league teams and blood drives and all kinds of different things. And I think that as we're able to preach that message a little bit and make sure that our leaders here in South Carolina know that these are not out-of-state businesses, these are locally owned, locally sourced businesses that are providing quality of life to the constituents that they represent, it goes a long way for us to be able to continue to build that relationship.
No, absolutely. And, Pearce and Terry, you both talked about some of the wins you all had in the mid 2010s. But for everyone, what are some of the wins you've had recently, or what are some of the legislative, advances that you're really proud of right now?
Yeah, we just had a big one.
Well, brag about it, Terry.
Yeah, I mean, Pearce talks better about this stuff than me, but we just had signed into law. What month is this now? Was that in June that this happened? It feels like ages ago. May. Anyway,
I agree with
soon.
you.
We had two things happen. One, we had a bonded transfer change in the state that would allow us to transfer beer between locations, which wasn't a thing before, and while a larger investment for a lot of us brewery owners, it's something that will definitely change the game for folks in South Carolina. And then two, we had a law change that now allows us to sell kegs to consumers directly from our breweries, which is also a huge deal. We can sell up to a sixtel, and we couldn't have done that previously. So yeah, those are two huge wins that took all the effort we just described, that since we've been talking so far, all that effort to get to earlier this year.
Congrats, that's awesome. What's the next battle to fight in the legislature? Are you able to share? If not, will we get it?
Well, there will always be. So I mentioned South Carolina is a mandatory 3-tier state.
Yeah.
Our neighbor to the north, North Carolina, does allow for self-distribution. And so in this state, there will always be a great amount of interest by small brewers to earn the ability to self-distribute their product to some level. We have worked very hard across the past year a couple years to develop strong relationships with the South Carolina Beer Wholesalers Association. I am very pleased to be able to say they were not just they did not only did they not stand in the way of the bill we passed this year, but we were able to work very well with them in conjunction, because at the end of the day, legislators, what they want to know is that all the stakeholders are coming to the table and can be in some sort of agreement. And to make it easy for legislators, you got to do a lot of work before you get into the State House with the other stakeholders. And so, the Wholesalers Association is a big one here. And then we also have a very active retailer association, some of which don't think anything of self-distribution, some of which very much want to keep things the way they are. So we made a lot of strides in working with each other this year, and hopefully we'll be able to build on that as we head into the future.
Awesome. Thanks for that. No, getting away from the legal side of things, are there any other challenges that South Carolina beer is currently facing that don't fall into that header?
I would say, we are, because the industry here is not as advanced as in some of the other states, especially North Carolina. While we do get a lot of great service from industry members and when I say that, I mean craft in general, the industry, we get a lot of great service from those folks. We don't have a lot of homegrown. There's a few nascent providers. I think we've got one malt house now in South Carolina, but there's opportunities there, as Campbell mentioned, from an economic development perspective. Terry brought up BMW. BMW was a game changer for the state of South Carolina, because not only did you get BMW, but then you got all the suppliers to BMW came in. Same thing with Brewing here in Charleston. So very much something we're focused on in the craft beer industry. One of our board members, David Thornton, is very active with the agricultural community. And he does some awesome work in talking with the farmers and the Farm Bureau around what we can do to be supporting South Carolina ag and that sort of thing from a craft.
Dive deeper into that one, Pearce. I'd love to learn more about.
Oh, geez. Now I need David on the phone. But, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I think some of the malt houses in North Carolina, Riverbend, Carolina, they would tell you it took a lot of work partnering with farmers to get the quality of the grains that were being grown where they needed it to be able to provide the quality malts they were looking to sell to craft brewing. So David is very invested in that and working with farmers on that, and getting the right kinds of agricultural engineering plants in South Carolina to be able to serve our needs better. And then also pushing South Carolina brewers to use as much South Carolina product as possible, especially when it comes to things we can use like fruit, and that sort of thing. So it is a real labor of love for him, but it's an important subject for us as a guild as we look to kind of grow the entirety of the industry overall.
And what fruits are South Carolina is known for?
Peaches. We do more peaches in South Carolina than they do in Georgia.
True.
So on this call, I've been mindful always to say South Carolina versus just Carolina, because I'm in Virginia. So Carolina to me is North Carolina. But North Carolina is both of our neighbors. What type of relationship do you all have with brewers with the guild in your neighboring states?
That's a great question. Speaking from me personally, I think from our guild, I know Campbell's got a great relationship with the guild in all of those states, all of our neighboring states. The communities in both, especially in North Carolina, but in Georgia as well, have been very supportive of all the things we've been doing in South Carolina to grow. You can call them up, walk in their breweries, ask them questions, they'll give you answers. I think that is, part of what we all love about this brewing community is everyone supports each other, and there's no secrets, as it were. So they've been very accepting, and being in such close proximity, having them create the styles that they've created, and they kind of prime things for us. It made it a little bit easier for folks to get adjusted to craft beer. At the same time, they're very tough to compete with because they are larger than us and they have more flexible laws, but they're great. I have a lot of great relationships with folks in Asheville and elsewhere, and we have a lot of fun with those folks.
Yeah, a couple just to piggyback off of Terry, if I can. I mean, I think one of the best programs that the BA I think has in terms of being a national partner is their statewide guild collaborative program, and so and Pearce and Terry and any of the board members can take advantages too, but I try to take a lot of advantage of it as kind of the new guy in the industry, but I'm able to have, bi-weekly calls and in-person networking events in Madison, Wisconsin with the other 50, and actually it's more than that because there's some regional guilds as well in other states, but, the 50 plus executive directors across the country. People like Paul William with the New York State Brewers Association, Joseph Cortez in Georgia, Lisa Parker in North Carolina. These are folks that have been in the industry 5, 10, 15 years in the capacity as an executive director. And so being able to, for us here in South Carolina, to have them as resources and to sometimes just ping them and say, hey, this is what's going on in South Carolina. What's going on in what's going on in New York? How does this look in New York? Or how does this look in Virginia? It is super helpful for us to be able to have that relationship with the BA and with our other statewide guilds. The other thing I'll say just very quickly is, we've been a little bit more intentional recently about trying to work with some of the regional guilds. So I'm looking at the Charlotte Guild, the Charlotte Brewers Alliance. We've tried to, because a lot of our members up in the Rock Hill, York area, you are also kind of cross members in that alliance as well. And so I've tried to make it a point to have speaking opportunities for their leadership team to come down and speak at some of our regional meetings. We can cross share on that as well. So we're trying to be more intentional about how we're partnering with some of these statewide and national organizations as well.
I think that's so important, Campbell. I really do love everything you just said. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into what your guild stands for. The past few years, we've worked towards creating a more inclusive, more welcoming, safer craft beer industry. I saw that the guild has a code of conduct. Tell me more about how this came to be, why it's important to you, what it entails.
Yeah, so obviously, you mentioned, Andrew, the inclusivity in this industry. I know to Pearce and I and the guild, we wanted to set an example that we do things the right way here, and we believe that everybody should be involved in every everybody should have the same opportunity to be involved in this community, and because it really is a community. And at the same time, there's we live in the South, and there's some folks who have different opinions, and it sometimes makes it difficult as an organization of brewers or rebels by nature. I would venture, I would say. It's sometimes difficult to get all those opinions in one room and to get folks to agree to be civil to each other or to treat everybody how they expect to be treated. And so this was something that we wanted to put together to say, like, look, we're an organization that believes in this community and believes in everybody, and believes in holding ourselves to a higher standard than maybe like a social organization or something else would, and to show that we also protect our membership against any of potential issues that might arise. So codes of conduct are one of the things that are easy to talk about but difficult to implement and enforce. And so we were very deliberate. The BA's got a ton of great resources around this. We use the BA as the guidepost for this. But yeah, it was largely just if you want to take somebody seriously, they have to be professional, and we saw that as one of our the cornerstones of what we were trying to build here.
I think that's really important, Terry. Now, to go back to something we talked about a little earlier, it seems like there's quite a few different regions of beer in the state of South Carolina. How do you combat that regionalism? I mean, Campbell, you mentioned like the guild conference, you do like the quarterly meetups, but how do you build that connectivity between everyone in South Carolina beer, no matter where you are?
Yeah, I can speak kind of what we do as a guild regionally, and then let Pearce and Terry kind of speak to maybe some individualism on that. I decided as a board and as a guild about a year ago that as a state that is still not as large as other states. I mean, in terms of the number of breweries, in terms of the landmass, we still wanted to divide our state up into regions to give kind of that individual flair to what those regions are doing. We have 5 different regions across the state: upstate, Midlands. Upstate, of course, is your Greenville area where Terry is. Low Country's down where Pearce is. Midlands area here in Columbia where I am. PD, which is kind of out towards the beach and that part of the state. And then we have one that's our York County, kind of near Charlotte area. It's called the Upper Palmetto area, because there is such a large concentration of breweries right up there next to Charlotte. And so I think one of the things I've noticed in being able to travel to these regional meetings and get to have conversations with all the members in these regions is that they are very individual. But even one of the ideas that we've just recently come up with in order to kind of tie each of these regions together and tie that regional flair together is we have an annual Brewers Cup every single year, which is a beer competition amongst our guild members. And so we've recently come up with an idea, actually from one of our board members, to have each region brew a collab beer and be able to actually submit that regional beer to our Brewers Cup competition. And so that is something that I've seen a lot of excitement from our regional heads, from our regional members, in terms of something that creates a little bit of buy-in amongst everybody, but also kind of creates a friendly competition amongst the state of which region is going to have the best beer to be entered in the South Carolina Brewers Cup. So that's what I've seen from a guild perspective, but I think Pearce and Terry could probably speak to what in specific in their regions.
You're on mute, Andrew. That is the first time I've had to tell a host you're on mute.
I know. I feel really silly doing it. The dog was barking a second ago. I didn't want to interrupt Campbell there. But I was saying, Campbell, which region's your favorite? Pearce, I'll throw it back to you. Pearce, your turn.
I love traveling them all. They're awesome.
No, I think the most important thing we do, and that we're starting to develop cadence around, is our annual trade show where we bring everybody together. What's really fun is to see the breweries that invest in sending folks to that, how much all the teams at the individual breweries enjoy being together. Because, we see each other every once in a while in the market and that sort of thing. Obviously, we see each other a lot, Low Country folks, but still not as much as we would like, because we're all invested in our breweries. And, that is one thing that I think COVID took away from us, and I would dare say that's probably not a South Carolina issue. That's a nationwide issue. Is one of the major things craft beer had going for it before COVID were collaborations and collaborative efforts. And then COVID took that away. And that's just something I think that, we at Commonhouse have tried to focus on. I know the Guild is focused on is how do we recapture that magic? Because at the end of the day, you're never going to see the macro beer makers collaborate with each other, company to company, maybe brand to brand, like some ill-fated advertisement in the Super Bowl this year that nobody could figure out. But you're not going to see or I'll probably eat my words on this, but I doubt you're ever going to see a Budweiser Coors, collaboration beer. But you see that all the time in craft beer. And it's just something that we've got to get back to. It gets us out of our own facilities and into each other's places of work. And so I think from a Guild perspective, the trade show has been a huge win for getting everybody together.
Yeah, and I would add on top of that one of the advantages that we have, being a small state, which sometimes that folks wouldn't say that's an advantage, but one of the advantages we have is that we can anyone can get to any corner of the state in a couple hours. And having that trade show as the central point where we meet up, there is no, you joked about, competition between regions. I really don't feel that, honestly, because we're all in everybody's backyard all the time, and we can easily, I'm going to see Pearce next week in person. And, it's really easy to hang out like that.
He says that until it comes time to brew that collaboration beer for the Greenville area.
No one wants to be number 2. Something tells me collaboration is going to be a theme in this state series. So I'm looking forward to hearing what other states are doing as well. And it's been awesome to hear what you all are doing. That's, creating a more successful South Carolina craft beer community. But, for every industry professional listening right now, people go to a lecture, people go to a conference, they don't remember a whole lot sometimes, unfortunately. If they could remember one thing from today's conversation about South Carolina beer, what would you want it to be? Remember, you're talking to industry professionals, not consumers. So I would love to hear what you think that takeaway should be.
I'll give you mine. In a world in which, craft beer is definitely on a downturn, I think we all got the 2x4 to the face at CBC this year. Please don't forget that the rising tide still lifts all boats, and that the more we can do together and the more we can do as guilds working with partners like affiliates and other businesses and state agencies, whatever it is, the different angles we have to take, the rising tide will still lift all boats.
Love it. Campbell, you're next.
I mean, I think I know this is more toward, the kind of the industry, but I mean, I think it still holds true is that I want everybody to know that's either a consumer or is in the industry to know how much, craft breweries and these small businesses across the state really do increase the quality of life for folks that are in these communities statewide. I mean, I just can't say it enough about these small communities I go to that don't have one, that when I visit and when I tell people, what I do and who I work for, they're like, man, that would be awesome if we had somewhere to take the kids on a Saturday to where, me and my wife could go and have a beer or have a retirement party. I mean, that really is what it's kind of going to. What I've seen is kind of the novice in the industry with craft brewing scene. So that would be my biggest takeaway is just, the community support that these businesses provide to these local communities. I think it goes unnoticed sometimes. And I think that we as a guild need to do a better job of highlighting that.
No, I would love to hear more of those highlights for sure, Campbell. Thanks for sharing that. Terry, last but not least.
Yeah, I echo what those guys just said. But I think since they took the serious ones and I agree with everything they said, I'll do the joke. We are not North Carolina. So you mentioned earlier, there's not just Carolina. I believe that South Carolina has our own identity. Our beers are different. Our flavor profiles are different. And there's a lot of creativity coming out of this state from a beer perspective. And we're excited to share all of that with everybody who comes here, which incidentally, we have great tourism. So come visit our state and drink our great craft beer.
Love it, Terry. Well, I'll let the Guild of North Carolina respond to that when we host them in a few months. So I'll look forward to that. Now I'll put you one more time against your neighbor to the south, Georgia. What's so special about South Carolina peaches? That's better than Georgia peaches. Why?
I didn't say they were better. I said I didn't say they were better. I said we produce more. I believe is actually a real statistic, as is evidenced by the Peachoid water tower in Gaffney, South Carolina. So if you're ever
driven by before,
there you go. Also looks like a big rear end, but if you were born and raised here, it's the butt. Yeah, we just make more of them. I'm not going to claim that they're better. I'm just going to say we produce more.
That's still a strong claim to make, and I like it, Pearce. Congratulations on that one. So I know I'm excited to hang out with you three in December at CBP Connects over December 4, 5, and 6. So if anyone listening wants to come hang out with us, learn more about South Carolina beer and experience Charleston, which I know I'm very much looking forward to. That's going to be December 4, 5, and 6. But Pearce, Campbell, and Terry, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share what's going on in South Carolina beer. So I'll see you soon. And everybody have a great day.
Thanks for doing it, Andrew.
Bye, everybody. Appreciate it.